Camp is underway. Training camp is underway. The Browns, where are they at? West Virginia? Something
Yep.
like that.
Yes, sir.
So
I love that move, though. Just get away from Cleveland for a bit.
yeah.
Just because the pressure around the city this year is, I think, ultimately high. I think it makes sense to just go away.
Yeah. Well, and all the distractions from last year with Deshaun and the media and all of that, just to be able to get away, get in a secluded environment. And there's so many new, especially on the offense, there's just so many new pieces. So I completely agree. But I'm not going to have a lot to say on this. So I'll just say my piece here real quick. I try not to overreact to camp as much as possible. But to steal a point that I said yesterday on the Dogs or 2 days ago on the Dogs podcast, the Browns are using Elijah Moore, Tristan. In my opinion, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is being used the same way Deebo Samuel is being used. And I love that. I think that role is perfect for this team and this offense. He looks fantastic. Cedric Tillman looks great. He looks really good. He looks very much a part because of his size and everything. Cooper, he's had an injury, but he'll be okay. Atkins made a great play today. Everything's just looking really good. Don't want to overreact to it. The only other thing I wanted to address real fast, other than Deshaun looks great. And from all accounts, looks a billion times better physically, mentally, emotionally, on the field, just way, way better, way back to himself is what people are saying. But the one last thing, Tristan, before I let you say what you would like to say on this, Jalen Darden should make this roster. He brings you something unique. I think with the NFL kick return rule changes, the Browns were having Darden and DPJ doing the punt and kick returns. I think for me that writes the end of Jakeem Grant. I think Darden is a guy who Tristan, I don't know how much you know about him or going back to him in college. This dude he's great. He's really good. He got cut by the Bucks. He had a couple injuries. I'm not entirely sure what the whole story of him in the NFL is, but this dude in college was unstoppable. And when you're talking about shaping out this wide receiver room, I think we're keeping 7 receivers personally. But I'd throw him at the bottom of this roster. Anthony Schwartz sucks. He's not going to make the team. With Jakeem Grant, he's had injuries. He's older. And now the rule change, I just don't see a role for him on this team that's that valuable. I think you give it to this kid who has a lot of potential, who's showing out in camp. If he comes out and has a great preseason on top of this camp, I think he's got to make the roster. So that's my opinion. Tristan, go ahead. What do you think about training camp so far?
Yeah, like you said, I like what I'm hearing about Elijah Moore. I think with Elijah, of course, anything that you see in camp, you have to take with a grain of salt. Like DPJ's been a camp hero the previous 2 camps.
Yeah.
And where's he been during the regular season? I mean, so if we're being brutally honest here. So always take these types of things with a grain of salt when we look at camp reports. However, I think if there's anything to highlight about why Elijah Moore's really looking good, it's because of how big of a need he fills. Mm-hmm. I feel like we absolutely needed a guy with elite speed, which he has. He has elite speed, elite quickness. We needed a guy that had that. And clearly it shows because Stefanski is able to open up the playbook more. And allows him to add some versatility to our offense, which we desperately need, especially in that passing attack. I think that if there's anything, if you're somebody who's not trying to get too optimistic, is trying to, manage your expectations a bit. I think the best way to look at this is hey, Stefanski now has somebody who can do something different for him, somebody who can provide in a different way that makes a lot of sense for us. Um, that's what I would be looking at here, and that's what I would be getting excited about. Is just that idea that it's something completely new to our offense, something that we desperately needed. Um, when it comes to Jalen Darden, you know, I liked what I saw from him. I like what I'm seeing from him in camp. I liked what I saw from him in the little bits that we saw last season. Um, just being brutally honest, I don't know if he's going to make it to the roster just because of the depth that we have there. I think that there's a lot of guys fighting for places. He might be a guy that hangs on to a spot and then gets cut once when Marquise Goodwin comes back.
Yeah,
And,
that could be.
if we're being brutally honest here, um, if we're looking at what we need from our sixth or seventh receiver, you know, when really does a sixth or seventh receiver have much impact in an offense? Not really a whole lot. So we're looking more for somebody who's going to have a bigger special teams impact. Um,
Well, that's why I
which
think
of
he does
course,
make it,
yeah,
though.
which of course,
Yeah.
he has been showing out at camp. I will say that. Um, but also, I mean, you restructured Jakeem Grant's deal, and that's the other thing is like you restructured his deal and made it pretty much harder for him to get cut because you'd have more of a hit against your cap with cutting him. So I just almost think it's written in the stars he's going to get cut for that reason, and I don't know. I have a tough time deciphering what is going to happen with the bottom of this receiving group. Because listen, we know which guys are going to stay on the roster. We know that we're going to see, you know, uh, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, DPJ, uh, you know, Cedric
Tillman,
Tillman.
Bell.
We know we're going to probably have Bell. I mean, it would be shocking if we didn't.
There's
Um,
no way they cut Bell. Anthony
no, it's way
Schwartz
too
was on
early.
this team 2 years too much, 2 years too long,
Yeah,
and David Bell's been here for a year. There's no
yeah.
way he gets cut.
No, I know what you're saying. So right there, you have 5 slots. I mean, you're asking Darden to rise to the top of a group that there's a lot there, and even then, like when Marquise Goodwin comes back, he might get cut. So his real only hope is if we are 100% taking 7 guys on this roster, and if he's the clear cut returner for this team. That's really his only chance, and he has to be miles better than Jakeem Grant. And I don't think that based off of the restructure that we did for him, the restructure we did for him, as well as the fact that we signed him to a decent deal and he hasn't played a snap for us yet. You really think Andrew Berry is going to be okay with that? Like I don't know. I'm managing my expectations with that. I feel like it's going to be Jakeem Grant taking that final roster spot, and maybe if Darden doesn't get picked up by another team, we have him protected on the practice squad. That's what I'm thinking, and then he's there if we need him, like we did last season. I'm pretty sure that's the role he had last season because I don't think he was a full time roster guy, but I think he played a couple of downs here and there. But either way, yeah, I think no matter what, it's again not going to be something that ultimately sways where the direction of this team, but it is still something worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's probably more of a see how the preseason shakes out and if some of these guys can step up, be a little bit of a bigger role, have kind of a bigger impact. It happens every year for a couple teams where it's like, yeah, that guy showed out in the preseason, made the roster. Some guys doesn't. Damon Sheehy, Giuseppe, remember? That was as much of a story as you can get, and he was really good. And the preseason didn't make the roster. So who knows? You could definitely be right for sure. I think it's just kind of a wait and see. at this point, and plus, like you said, Goodwin's situation, that's TBD, and hopefully he'll be okay. But who knows?